Hello, my name is Kathy Bissell. Welcome to the Golf Show 2.0. Today we have some special guests from the Golf Heritage Society, and they're going to show us some of their collection or collections. And we're also going to have a chance to see a little bit inside the collection of Merion Golf Club, all of the memorabilia and historic artifacts that they have saved over the years. So, Gary, why don't you go ahead and introduce our guests?
Thanks, Kathy. We've got George Perto, at-large director, at-large director of the Golf Heritage Society. He's in the bottom right there where Charlie Weaver usually used to sit. And we've got John Capers III, past president of the GHS, historian of Merion, and John is currently in the archive room at Merion Golf Club. John, I want you to look around and let me know if there's a crate in there that's marked Ark of the Covenant.
Yeah,
I got a feeling there's so much cool stuff in there that maybe is where they put that crate. What do you think?
that's actually the box I'm going to end up in.
Well, just remember, when the angel starts flying around, keep your eyes closed. That seemed to work.
No question about it. But they all hit feathery, so it's not too much of a problem.
Well, we're going to look at some U.S. Open memorabilia because this next week is U.S. Open week.
And
George,
what better
why don't
time?
you start us off with some incredible artifact that was not included in the Ark of the Covenant crate.
I'd be glad to. Fantastic. I started collecting in '92, basically clubs, and then I saw something that was going to be in an auction, and it was the winner's medal for the 1955 U.S. Open.
Wow.
And this gold gleaming thing was sitting on a table, and I said, how do you get that? And you gotta come to our auction in a few months. So I decided I had to have it. It was just, that's it. I mean, some things are cool.
Who originally won that?
This was Jack Fleck. And
yeah.
the story in 55. And at that time, I didn't care who won it. I didn't care the story. I didn't care anything. It was just like the coolest thing. And then once I got it, actually, I had it in my pocket for like 2 weeks. But anyway, but then, as you say, you learn the story, and every one of these items, or almost all these items, have a story, and that's what just enhances it so much. I mean, to say a few things about Jack Fleck, this would have been Hogan's 5th U.S. Open, which he wanted dearly. And so he came to Olympic Club expecting, high hopes, and he was the favorite by far. And so Jack Fleck was this Iowa Muni Pro driving range pro, and he loved Hogan. And he actually wrote a letter to Hogan earlier in the year and said, hey, could I try some of your new clubs? And Hogan invited him to Fort Worth, took him to the factory. They made him clubs, and Hogan actually delivered the wedge and sandwich to a set on that Monday of U.S. Open week. So, wow. Fleck was overjoyed, and Fleck loved Hogan. Well, anyway, just to make what could be a really interesting story for me short, they came down to the 4th round, and Hogan is leading at Olympic Club. And they go, it's it. Now, who's right behind him? Snead, Boros, and Tommy Bolt. So the world's going, can those guys catch Hogan? Well, all week long, there'd only been 4 rounds in the 60s, all players, all days. And Hogan shoots 70, lowest round of the day. Almost everybody's in. He's got a 5-shot lead on Snead and Bolt. And literally, they crown him the 5th Open winner. And Gene Saracen's there, says, congratulations. They sign off TV, off the air, and say, the winner of the U.S. Open is Ben Hogan, is 5th. Fantastic. Hogan flips his ball to Joe Dye, the commissioner of the USGA, and says, put this in the museum, his ball.
Wow.
So what happens is Fleck's still out there, though. He teed off an hour later, and they tell him, if you make a birdie coming in, you could tie Hogan. Well, he immediately bogeys that hole. So now it's done. He says, well, maybe I can make 2 birdies. And his playing partner, Gene Littler, goes, well, if you make 2 birdies, you still got to make 2 pars. Now, everybody was shooting like 80s. So this is going to be impossible. Well, that morning, Fleck, who was a very religious guy, he's shaving in the mirror, says an angel comes to him, and he swears by it, pardon the pun, and Says the answer says, you're going to win the Open today. You're going to win the Open. And so, okay, he felt pretty confident. Well, he birdied 2 of the last 4 holes, got into the playoff with Hogan. And the final thing was in the playoff, Hogan was 1 down. He just birdied 17 from 2 down and 1 down, got to 17, got to 18, says, I can birdie this hole. It's the shortest par 4 up the hill. And his foot slips, hooks the ball into the knee-deep stuff, takes 3 to get out, hits it on the green in 5, makes a ridiculous downhill putt for double, and Fleck wins the Open. Now, just 2 more quickie items. Here's the ball that Fleck won the Open with. The title is 7. His lucky title is 7. A few little scuff marks on it, but not too bad. And, this is a famous photo of Hogan fanning Fleck's putter at the end. So that was like, that was one of those, the story, I wanted the medal, but I found out the story was just as good.
Well, you know what? There's not exactly the same, but a similar kind of thing with Johnny Miller when he won at Oakmont, is that some lady he didn't know came up to him ahead of time and told him that he was going to win the U.S. Open, and he just dismissed her. And he had several things like that happen during the week, and he had voices from above telling him to open up his stance, and the voice even corrected him and said, no, more open than that, So he's making a bunch of changes, and his predictions are coming that he's going to win it. So who are we to know?
Hey, George, so why does Jack Fleck not have the ball and his medal?
That's a good question.
Did you ever contact him about that and try to see if he wanted him back?
Here's what happened. He moved to Arkansas later. And he won other tournaments, won the Phoenix Open. He was a good player. But he opened a course, and as a religious guy, he opened this course called A Little Bit of Heaven was the name of his course. Well, it rained like heck in like 1990, 91, flooded the course. And because he had to make payments to the bank, and he wasn't poor, but he said, I can do one of 2 things. I can put my clubs up, the Hogan clubs, or I can put the U.S. Open medal and ball up. Okay. So he decided that because he was so into Hogan and he wanted those clubs so badly, he put them in auction. And then the underbidder was actually San Francisco, was Olympic Club themselves. But I said, no, they don't want it as bad as I want it. So that's all that happened.
That's a great story. John, what do you got from Merion, U.S. Open related, that's going to blow our socks off? Although that's kind of redundant to even say that. It's going to, I know it is.
I'll tell you what, we'll get to that in a moment. But you're telling the story, George, about the Angel or you're going to win it. Apparently, when Justin Rose played in Tigers tournament here at Aronimink the year before the Open in 13 and 12, there's a little girl standing around the putting green. And she finally caught Rose's eye, and this was on Sunday, and she told him, I like you a lot. I know you're going to play well, and you're going to win today. Well, darned if he didn't.
Wow.
Fast forward a year. Now, Rose doesn't tee off until, 2:20 or something on the afternoon on Sunday. At 8 o'clock that morning, he and his wife are in a Starbucks in Haverford, Pennsylvania. And lo and behold, there's the little girl with her father and her brother, and her father goes over to Justin and says, I've got somebody that I think you want to see. Well, he's a great gentleman. He walks over, and he all of a sudden realizes who it is, and she just stands up and looks at him and says, you're going to win today. Don't worry about it. And these weird things do happen. So,
John, do you have her phone number, and does he pick stocks? And how is she on DraftKings?
I don't know. That's a great one, Gary. I mean, the point is, he should have taken her around, but a neat little lady. And by the way, she was at the 18th green when he came in.
That's awesome.
So he met her again.
He never told us that story, did he, Gary?
Well, that's 10 years ago, Kathy. You're pushing it for us to remember every detail from 10 years ago. We might have been busy writing about how Phil Mickelson didn't win it again.
Yeah, lost another Open. Yeah.
Well, he's the king of second. But Merion's been fortunate to have had a number of Opens. And the first one, of course, was in 1934 when Olin Dutra won it here. But here again, time and place is what makes things happen. That was the first Open that Ben Hogan ever played in. And of course, 16 years later, he comes back in 1950, and they get into a playoff between Hogan, Fazio, and Mangrum. To begin with, Hogan had played a number of practice rounds, and they had to get from 15 down to 14 clubs. There was a 15-club rule, the PGA at that time.
Oh.
And the reason was the PGA did not want their members to have to take a club out to put a sand wedge in, which one of their members had created. So Hogan plays a number of practice rounds and decides, to his mind, there's no 7-iron shot at Merion. So the 7-iron came out of the bag, and he did not have it there during the entire tournament. The other club that disappeared was after he hit the 1-iron on 18 on the 72nd hole. In those days, it was local caddies. So they brought him in, and they put the bag on the rack, just like they do today when you finish a round. Somebody obviously walked by and just grabbed the tallest iron, jacked it out, and walked away with it. The 1-iron disappeared. He did not have it in the bag for the next day. But he hit his tee shot on Saturday and Sunday within about 3 feet of each other. And on Sunday, in the practice round and the playoff round, he did hit a 4-iron, not any other club. And that's what the man told me, and I'm going to go with it. Now, when you're in a tournament like that in a playoff, somebody keeps an official scorecard for each one of the players.
Yes.
But Fazio kept his own scorecard with all 3 players' scores on it.
Wow.
It's the only known card that has all 3. And then, of course, thank you very much, Mr. Fazio. When it was over, he had a guy by the name of Hogan sign it. So that's
incredible.
One of the treasures from.
I wonder why they didn't use just Golf Genius on their cell phones, like I had to do today. That's crazy.
Listen, that's better than cuneiform. I mean, they're coming up in the world in 1950.
That's what that's really unusual.
It's a card that we got 2 years ago. And one of the interesting things about how we acquire stuff here at Merion is none of it's paid for by the club. And about 50% of the donations, over 150 a year, come from members, 40% from guests, and 10% from the staff. So that's how we get unique pieces back and forth. And then we have a group of people that I refer to as the angels if we need something. Okay. And every once in a while, something is donated. Now, 1950 was the Open. The next one was 71. And we have the putter that Jim Simons used. He was the last amateur to lead the U.S. Open after 54 holes. Actually, he led it after 68 holes. And when we received that, we received not only his bag tag, his player's badge, but also, as George knows, his gold medal for finishing low amateur in the Open that year.
Okay.
So if that was 71, along comes 81, and David Graham ends up winning the Open. So he gave us his bullseye putter, which has his name, which I'm sure is going to be difficult to see if at all possible, has his name engraved on it.
Yep.
But he had lead tape on the bottom, not on the back where the sweet spot is. And I asked him about that. Now, remember, this is 1981. And he said, well, yeah, but I can hit that club about 100 yards left-handed. So it's my go-to rescue club if I'm under a tree, but I'm not there very often.
I've never heard of that. That's incredible.
Well, the crazy thing is, it's the putter he also won the PGA with in 79. And it's got an Odyssey grip on it, which is the third grip he had on the club. He had a much bigger flat grip all the way around, and it was declared illegal, so he had to change it.
Okay.
So in 71,
Jim Simons is from I live in Pittsburgh. Jim Simons is from Butler, just north of here, in the
absolutely
Butler Country Club. When they built a new snack bar, they named it after him. So,
well, he was a great amateur, a good player, and tragic early death. He had all sorts of eye problems and other medical problems, but his family wanted his medal to come to Merion, and we were very grateful to have it. It's made a difference. Justin Rose has been great. We've got the driver that he used. So if that's the ecstasy of the 2013 Open, the agony is we got the wedge that Rory McIlroy stepped on the 11th hole on Sunday when he broke it a couple of days later. So that's the agony and the ecstasy. The good driver and the broken wedge.
That's great. George, why don't you give us something else? What else you got?
Well, we're talking about great shots like Hogan's 1-iron to 18 that, got him in the playoff had he not made par. Well, this it happens to be another medal because I'm kind of a medals guy, as what I've gotten into. This
That's
is
amazing.
the winner's medal for the 1897 U.S. Open. And I just want to let people know that as collectors of golf, like I was a rock and mineral collector. And I've always been a collector because I like stuff. But I went to the Tucson Gem and Mineral Show, and I saw the most beautiful museum quality stuff. And they were hundreds of thousands of dollars in the 1980s. I go, I cannot collect museum quality specimens. And when I discovered golf, I go, you can collect museum quality specimens. So we folks at the Golf Heritage Society, we all have our own little niche. So it's kind of a fun place to learn and show off a little bit and share. But anyway, come back to my 1897 U.S. Open medal, which I had to scour the earth. I heard about it. It took me about 20 years to come up with it. That's sometimes the fun is the story is the item itself.
It's the chase.
The chase, absolutely. But this was won by a guy named Joe Lloyd. I won't go into his story, but it's an interesting one. But he beat Willie Anderson on the last hole, and Willie Anderson won 4 U.S. Opens. That's a record, and that's what Hogan was trying to beat and get his 5th. Well, Willie Anderson had 4, and he beat him by Lloyd needed birdie on the last hole to tie, and the last hole is Chicago Golf Club, Wheaton, Illinois.
Yeah,
it's 461 yards. Now that was a long par 5, and this is gutter ball era. So this is not rubber call. 425 was a par 5 in 1911, and this is before the balls went 30 yards further. Well, he hit a drive that floored everybody. They said the longest drive anybody'd seen. He hit his spoon onto the green and made the 20-footer for eagle, which the newspaper said the crowd fainted. But anyway, it was literally a circus. So he made eagle on 18 to win by 1 and beat Willie Anderson, which kept him from getting his 5th. And the thing about it is we can go so it took almost 100 years until a U.S. Open winner had to birdie 18 to win. There were people who made birdies, but they didn't need it to win. And there were people that, made a birdie, but they're already up by 4. Well, I put that, and like a lot of people talk about Corey Pavin, not to put anybody down, but Corey Pavin's 4-wood to 8 at Shinnecock in 95. Now that was amazing. On the green. Yeah, great shot, but he 2-putted.
He didn't make the putt.
Yeah, he didn't make the putt, and he still won by 2. He could have bogeyed the hole. He could have duffed the shot and still would have won the U.S. Open. So I put this up there with Hogan's 1-iron to 18, Tiger making putts against Rocco at Torrey Pines, and Watson's chip in on 17 at Pebble. So, that's the takeaway story from that. Now he lived in Pau, France. That's where he was a pro, and they gave him a medal, congratulating him for winning the 1897 U.S. Open. So even in France in 1897, it was a pretty big deal to win the U.S. Open.
Didn't you say that was the only golf course in Europe or in continental Europe at the time?
Pau Golf Course was the first golf course in continental Europe. And he was the pro there. That course started in 1856. He was the pro in the 1880s.
For people who don't know,
from England, Joe Lloyd.
For people who don't know where that is, it's almost at the Pyrenees. It's way far southern France.
Exactly.
That really explains it for America's geographically challenged
where
populace.
Spain and France meet, it's the Pyrenees Mountains, and France is on one side, and
it's just to the right of Maine and Vermont for you people, for most Americans.
I mean, the rich Americans would go, the rich people from England too, but rich Americans go there, and they hired him to come back to America in the summertime to teach people. And Joe Lloyd was at Essex in Manchester, where the Curtises was. And when Joe Lloyd left as pro, some guy named Donald Ross became his replacement. But so Joe Lloyd spent a few summers here and did well in the U.S. Open. And
That's
won
cool.
one and came in like 7th and 4th and others.
At one point, Poe had wicker baskets instead of flags also.
Oh, okay.
Ooh.
Well,
That-
we won't
Yeah,
ask who
I'm-
had
I'm-
them first. We
I
won't
got
ask
you by
who had
one,
them
George.
first.
You got me there, baby.
That's awesome.
Okay, what do you got? We'll show something else.
Yeah, hey, John, the 1981 U.S. Open that David Graham won, that was actually my first U.S. Open covering it as a writer from the Milwaukee Journal. So I remember that one as much as any of the other ones, which is not that much, but probably because of that, Merion's probably always been one of my top 3 favorite courses in the world. But anyways, what else have you got in the Merion archives there?
Well, a lot of what we've got here follows the 20 USGA events that have been played. 18 of them played on this golf course. Whether it's the most recent one, which was the Curtis Cup, where the Americans won last year. Rosie Zhang played so well that they almost didn't have to play on Sunday. If they had won one more singles match on Saturday, it would have closed out the Curtis Cup. Unfortunately, it didn't happen because that would have been embarrassing all the way around, maybe even for both sides. But a lot of what is acquired here, Justin Rose's shoes from the last round on Sunday, for instance, signed by him. And I had a young man in here a couple of years ago who just thought Justin Rose walked on water, and he was only about 7 or 8, very small feet. So I said, well, hey, Dad, tell him to take his shoes off. He's in the archives room. And he does. Why am I doing this? And then I put the shoes down. I said, here, stand in Justin Rose's shoes. And the toes of both of them were signed. So those are the types of things that have happened here. And so much of it also comes from the Golf Heritage Society. You know, we're in our 50-plus years now. It's a group of over 1,000 people. Some people think we're all nuts. Some people realize that we are the backbone of collecting golf material and golf memorabilia in the United States. And anybody can join the GHS. We love to have people there. It's golfheritagesociety.com.
It's not about collecting as much as it is, to me, preserving these storied items.
It's preserving, and it's a forum from which you can find out damn near any question that you might have, whether it's about your club, yourself, your family. Somebody would ask George, for instance, well, do you know who played in this British Open? I think my uncle did, and he made the cut. We can help people find that type of information. And here at Merion, there's a large PowerPoint presentation to help clubs learn how to start their own archives.
Oh, that's
and the GHS can help people learn how to start collecting. Joe Murdoch, one of the founders, was so right one day when he said, don't buy anything unless it's in really good shape, and shoot for the best shape possible. Yeah. Let it go by. Collecting is like streetcars. There's always another item coming down the pike, yep. And it's probably better than the one you wanted. So golfheritagesociety.com is where people can get started.
Now, John, you were telling me before we started all of this discussion about literally the thousands of items that you have at Merion, and that you make them available for people who are doing research. Why don't you expand on that a little bit?
Well, there are over 300,000 digitized documents in the collection, and they are all character referenced. So anybody who wants to come here and do some research on any subject that is Merion related, and sometimes even more than that. One of our members of the committee, Wayne Morrison, is an architectural nut. So he happened to have all of the original blueprints of the Lido Club out on Long Island before it was destroyed. So now they go to build another Lido. And one of our former interns was applying for the job. Well, we fed him more information about the Lido Club than Lido had. And we've been able to help a number of young men, and also on the grounds crew when they go for superintendent's jobs. So sure. I'm dealing with a couple.
I'm looking forward to playing that recreation that Mike Kaiser did of Lido in Wisconsin. I think it's going to open later this summer.
Yeah, it's open. You're absolutely right. And it'll be a great job. They've done a lot of research to find out, what it really is and how it was structured, and why it went away, really, too. But anything,
the 81 Open at Merion was the impetus behind Forrest Fessler's famous wearing shorts at Oakmont, a story he told me a few years ago. He's unfortunately passed, but And the short version is he was with John Schroeder, notoriously slow, and John Brody, he was shooting like 80 something, and PJ Boatwright had him on the clock or whatever. He was looking to get him, and Schroeder hit a shot up over a bunker. They're somewhere up there on the 16th hole. They didn't see it, and they're looking, and they aren't going to find it. So Schroeder's about to take a drop, and they know they're behind. Fessler has walked up ahead, then above past the bunker, and he gets up there, Boatwright standing there watching these guys, and he walks up, and there's a ball right by Boatwright, and he says, "What's this?" And Boatwright didn't say anything. It's Schroeder's ball. He was standing there the entire time they looked for this lost ball and didn't say anything.
Can't help him legally.
Well, he was gonna. Well, at the end of the round, Boatwright slaps the whole group with 2 shots for slow play. They were irate. Fessler went in. They had a meeting up in the room, and the USGA guys were shocked that Boatwright would do that. And they said no penalty, but don't tell anybody in the press. And Forrest held on to that story for 20, 30 years. And he knew his last open was going to be Oakmont, so he wore the shorts on the one hole to just kind of give him a
coming down 18. Well, you're too young to remember, but in '68 when we played at the at Scioto for the amateur, and Fessler was wearing a pair of jeans that he had cut the bottoms, so they were totally frayed.
Oh no!
And he just drove Boatwright nuts wearing those.
Well, yeah, Boatwright had it in for 2 of the 3 guys. Brody didn't care about, but Schroeder was notoriously slow player.
Yeah,
George, let's go back to you. I know you've got a stash. And these stories are so good, we're gonna run out of time, but let's go through as much as we can here.
Let me push you to something that's like anybody can play with. Like you mentioned, 81 was I think you said 81 was your first Open. Like my first Open was Baltusrol 93. And so there's the tickets, and that's part of my little collection. If you want to, if you want to collect tickets from the years you've been, go ahead. You can take it another step further. Like here's I just made this up today for you guys. These are pins. I mean, very easy to collect. These things aren't that expensive at all. This is on the end. This is a sectional qualifier low score medal. Now it happens to be from Minnesota, 48, Hogan's first win. But I mean, you can find those things on eBay or elsewhere. I mean, the thing next to it, the orange thing, that's a player's badge from 55. So one of the players in the 55 Open is wearing it. The middle, Ray Floyd's. If you win the Open, you can come to all the rest of the Opens. Just wear your badge you're in. You don't need tickets. Or if you're on the USGA committee, this guy in the end, the bronze one, he was a book collector. He was a book collector, Otto Probst, and he was part of the USGA committee, and he donated the most fantastic library to the USGA. But
what kind of estimated value would that player's badge have, George? I mean, just
player's badge. This one probably about $200 to $300, so not much. I mean, the dangling one on the ribbon that might only be $100 because I don't know who won it. Like Ray Floyd's might push $1,000, but I'm just saying. But like for instance, you can collect programs. Here's a Baltusrol 1980 signed by Jack.
I think I've got a 71 program. I could be wrong though, but I've got some old programs. I love programs.
So they're collectible. People put them together from the teens up. This one has to be signed by Jack. You mentioned price, couple $100. You'll probably do it. I mean, these were very like here's Ernie L's one at Congressional signed a scorecard. Lee Jansen 93. I picked these up at our Golf Heritage Society trade shows. Like $20 a piece.
It's incredible you can get that.
George, I'm going to stop giving you all that stuff.
Oh, yeah, I know. Here, I'll just show you one last thing. I mean, like, here's a Tiger sign flag. Flags. But, most flags don't go for that much. I mean, a Tiger sign U.S. Open flag might be $1,000, but, it may not have been the most exciting U.S. Open in history, but it was the
foggiest U.S. Open in history.
Not my socks off U.S. Open in history.
Well, so I hope you're going to, if you have any Merion related stuff, I hope you're eventually going to send it John's way.
I have one trophy from Merion. I was lucky enough. The GHS invites their members to Oakmont, to Merion. John puts on an incredible show at Merion. So if you're a member, you just show up. And sometime in March or April, and I saw the archive. I mean, I could have spent 4 days there. And I found out that I have a trophy that was won at Merion, but the winner is the guy who bought the land and gave it or sold it to Merion where the current course is. So he, and I was like, okay, so guess where that's going to go one of these days. All of these things, I know where my medals are going to go. I mean, some of these medals, like my Olympic medal, I'll probably have somebody arrange, but I'm not quite ready to give them up.
I think, Gary, that's also what's extremely important. You look at what George has got, what a lot of us have got at home. Most of the families don't give a darn about it. And not only that, they don't know what to do with it if we got hit by a bus. And that's what the GHS can help them do. They know who the dealers are, the collectors, the other people. So we try to help the universe of golf collecting by doing things like that and trying to get the material into the right person's hands at the right time.
I wonder if Olympic would be interested in the crutches that I had from San Francisco after I broke my ankle on their 8th hole.
Well, they might if you didn't sue them.
I didn't sue them, but I should have sued somebody.
Well, then sign them, Kathy, and make them think that it's really worth something.
I will.
John, you've probably, besides all the medals and all that stuff, you've got archives. I assume you've probably, somebody at Merion has tracked down every newspaper clipping, everything you can find on anything related to Merion. Have you got books full of stories and all that stuff?
That's how it started over 50 years ago. What we wanted was really just a repository of information about what took place on this property. So we went online and we downloaded every time the word Merion was mentioned in all the local newspapers. Then we branched out from there to the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, the Christian Science Monitor. Those all had good sporting sections.
Yeah.
And after we'd done that, then we said, hey, wait a minute, there's one more area. Let's try and go to the hometown newspapers of those people who had won here. That put us in the 100,000 plus document collection area just to start. And now it's over 300,000. Of that, about 115,000 are just photographs going back to 1912 of what this golf course looked like and how it evolved over the years. So that was a tremendous help when we redid the golf course a couple of years ago. We redid the greens. We did not change the routing or the structure, but we took care of that.
Gary, guess what it's time for? Our shameless plug.
Shameless plug. Subscribe now. It's free. Click like, click subscribe. You're not going to be in a mailing list. You're just going to get a new episode when we do it. And our goal, I know it's lofty, but we're still trying to earn that first 17 cents, which I'm pretty sure Paige Spearnack did in her first 9 seconds online. But,
Well,
I can't talk Kathy into doing some of the things Paige does. So we're still trying to get the first 17 cents.
well, gentlemen, thank you very much for being with us today.
What great stuff. The next meeting, John, I'm if I'm available, I'm coming to Merion because it sounds like too much fun. And then we're going to George's house for the after party.
Gary, just make sure if you maintain your membership in the GHS, you'll be on the list.
All right. Excellent.
Okay.